Hi everyone, today we got markets basically chopping in the same range that we saw yesterday. You can see it here, hit the peak at that 569 level, found support at 565. So we're in the same trading range we were in, but let's take a look under the hood and see if we can find some market direction for tomorrow.
Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started.
In news today, we got a judge banning the DOGE team from the Social Security records, which honestly is a little bit weird. It feels like they are just trying to find ways to slow down the fraud and abuse going on in the federal government. Basically, every employee of the IRS, regardless of previous experience or position, has access to these same kind of records, and it's pretty clear to me that the DOGE team is not trying to steal any records. They are just trying to potentially look for people that are already dead and in the Social Security network, which they did identify many millions of those. But now you got a judge coming out and saying this is a fishing expedition. Again, seems extremely disingenuous, but here we are, continuing to see the judicial branch fight the executive basically at every turn, and this is another iteration of that in my opinion. Moving over to fear and greed, like I said, we chopped sideways, so we got the same number 22 on the metric, sideways choppy price action in here. Strength still flat, breadth starting to turn up a little bit more. Want to see that continue. If we can continue to see strengthening breadth, that encourages the potential trend to the upside, which is what we're looking for. Put call ratio, extreme fear, still volatility, not quite to that trend line. The trend line here is 18.5. Want to see it hold there if it's going to do it. Otherwise, if it goes lower, that should be bullish for markets. Safe haven demand, still extreme fear, but turning higher. You like to see that. And then junk bond still holding flat in greed. Quick look at seasonality. Don't forget, we're looking for a little bit of a pullback here into the Monday of next week and then rallies through to the end of the month from there. So sideways choppy over the last couple days is what we saw. Expecting one more dip low and then a rally out to close out the month. Moving over to the economic calendar here for Thursday, initial jobless claims in line with expectations. You like to see that. Want to see that number continue to stay low. It did have a little bit of a spike and that caused markets to panic briefly, but we are back down and you like to see it. Leading index down 0.3, worse than expectation, not what you want to see there. And then 10-year tips well below the previous at that 2% range. That's absolutely what you want to see there. And then you can see Fed balance sheet only down 6 billion. So they are slowing that selling, which is what you want to see. Philly Fed manufacturing also came in a little bit better than expectation. So some of that soft data looking good. And then for tomorrow, there is nothing except for the quad witching expiration. Moving over to max pain. Speaking of max pain, we are here at 580, looking for a pretty substantial push up to get to that level. I don't think we're going to get it all the way to 580, but I could see a push to 573 to 580, I think makes sense. Either way, still looking a little bit bullish from here. And be careful trading off this when we have quad witchings with huge amounts of options, 4.4 million. These moves into expiration can be really dramatic. So be aware of that. We could see a ton of volatility into the close tomorrow with these numbers of options and quad witching. Moving over to the charts, looking at the S&Ps here, we did get a negative day down about 1/3%. We're still above the level 565.16. Could not get above that 21. So we've tested that level 3 times. It's a little bit concerning now that we can't get above 569.90 or the 200 sitting there at 571.25. So this is your zone of resistance. If we can get through there, then we're looking for a big move, 591 potentially. I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow, but if we can get through here, that's possible. And then in the following week, we could see one of those bigger moves. So right now, it looks good to potentially get through there, but I'm a little bit concerned that we continue to fail in that zone. And then looking at that hourly chart here, you can see got into the zone, rejected immediately, found support, and it's holding here after hours. So again, same as yesterday, need this zone to hold. It did. Want to see this zone break. It didn't, so we're in the same zone we were at the start of the session. Moving over to the Tasty charts, still bullish conditions. We tested that ATR trailing stop, 563.51, tested it here, bounced from that level. Again, middle of the range, ATR bands kind of curling in here with that tighter range here today. You want to see it hold this zone and push if it's going to do it. If it cuts through here, your lower range is going to be 560, so about 1% lower from current price. Again, I don't really think that's going to happen, but it is a possibility. I think we're going to go a little bit higher, potentially push through that range. That's what I'm looking for. Moving over to the Qs, same thesis, down about 1/3, continues to test this zone, test this trend line area. Third test of the zone, and we have continued to fail. Momentum still bullish, RSI still bullish. Again, want to see it push through there. We tested the low from yesterday and held that. You can see it here on the hourly. The low in here, tested that zone, tested it again pre-market, tested it again right at the end of the session and bounced, still holding in that area. RSI not as great there on the hourly, no volume here today, so sideways choppy. Again, looking for a push through here. If we can, then we're looking for at least 492 somewhere in here, but for now we can't seem to get above that 200 SMA at 581.77. Moving over to the Tasty charts here on the Qs, you can see middle of the range there, 477.47 is the ATR trailing stop, middle of the range right here, basically 479, and you can see ATR bands curling in. Again, still bullish conditions. Want to see it continue to push towards that upper band. 586.75 is that level. Want to see it push through the zone, maybe get as high as what we saw back here on the 17th, but for now, middle of the range with no clear direction, but did hold that ATR trailing stop, so still technically bullish. Moving over to the Russell here and the Dow, you can see similar thesis, down 0.6 and the Dow was down 0.07, so basically unchanged there for the Dow, but the Russell looks far worse, closed below 205.07. That was the critical level. Tested it a bunch, couldn't hold above it. Again, couldn't get to that 21 EMA. This was the zone we were trying to get through, that 208 level. Couldn't even touch it. That's a little bit concerning. At this point, you have to entertain the idea that this might be the initial touch. Maybe this is the midpoint here, and we're starting to see this pull back to either a double bottom or a higher low setup, which could take us all the way down to the 200, maybe 198. If we touch that again and bounce, then we're looking for a much bigger move. Maybe this is still a broader bottoming pattern, and we're just not there yet. Similar here on the Dow. Testing the zone twice, really 3 times if you include the Monday. Want to see it hold here if it's going to do it. Otherwise, you have to look at 412 as a next support to the downside. Moving over to the Mag 7. The Mag 7 was down on the day, but not by much. Still in the same trading range between 265 and 273. The Mag 7 is not leading us higher, so that's concerning, at least for the NASDAQ. Usually the Russell seems to be doing a little better, but not so much today. Overall, I think the SPY is probably the best choice, but the NASDAQ just continues to suffer because the Mag 7 is not leading markets higher, and the NASDAQ is super heavily weighted towards these 7 stocks. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft. Apple was down 0.5%. Microsoft was up about. Microsoft was also down about 1/4. In terms of zones, we're in the same zone, right? So 211, 217 in the same trading range. Could not get above the level. DOGE style candle, indecision candle as we head into witching. Same here for Microsoft, in the same trading zone. Could not get above 388 on a closing basis. Almost tested the highs back from Monday, but couldn't hold it. 21 EMA as resistance in there. Needs to get above 388. Look for a 394. If this continues to hold as resistance, you do have to entertain 378.77 as a potential target. Look for a better bottoming pattern there. So far, still testing this level, looking for clear direction. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA. These were actually positive, just barely. Tesla up 40 cents, still holding that support at 232.57. NVIDIA same at 116.70, holding that support, still testing the 21 EMA. So as long as those continue to hold at those levels, we should be looking for continuation pushes. And I still kind of like that. Momentum bullish, RSI still bullish. Tesla, not so much. NVIDIA looks a little better. Moving over to staples and discretionaries. Neither of these giving clear direction today either. Both of them down a little bit. Staples fell a little bit more. That's concerning. Maybe we're still transitioning to a risk on play, but either way, seeing both of these sell is not what you want. Want to see one of these start to pick up and one of these kind of base in here. Realistically, you want to see discretionaries go if you're looking for bullishness, staples if you're looking for bearishness. Moving over to breadth, 20 and 50-day breadth, relatively unchanged on the session as you would expect. Throwing wicks to that same zone on 20-day, can't get above this kind of 45 range, middle of the range between 36 and 51. No movement, momentum slightly bullish, and then looking at 50-day, same here. Threw wicks to the upside, closed bearish on the day, can't get above 40. So right now, indecision, no clear direction. Moving over to the dollar continues to find a little bit of strength, kind of in a basing formation here. Still struggling at the trend line. We tested it again here, you can see, and then rejected, but I think we're going to push through here on this session, in my opinion. Momentum slightly bullish, RSI slightly bullish. I think we have a little bit of potential on the dollar to get to 105.5. Again, low, high, higher high. Want to see this kind of grind higher into those zones. Moving over to bonds. Bonds had a bit of a wonky day. J&K down about 0.13. Had a really strong day yesterday on FOMC, gave a little bit of that back here today. TLT positive on the day, but look at this candle. Huge gap to the level here, 91.22. The 144 was there at 92.18, touched that level and then gave almost all of it back. So looks like an initial touch similar to this. Want to see it push through there. I still think that it will, and I still like bonds here. Moving over to volatility. Volatility continues to sell just slightly, looking for that kind of 1750 to 1850 area right in here. Haven't gotten there yet. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish, so this should continue a little bit lower until we get at least into that zone here. Moving over to my accounts, I made a little bit of money on the day, about $300, slowly grinding back from my absolutely catastrophic Monday. Not going to recover all of that, but somehow managed to get back green on the year. Again, not super great, but in terms of positions, I took everything off here today on the bearishness. I just don't see any clear direction. I'm looking for bullishness, but I think realistically we could go either way. Again, you have quad witching, which should give us some bullishness as well, but for now, being patient, following my rules. And we saw a ton of weakness at the end of the session, which I didn't like. So I wanted to take everything off and look for some potential evidence for direction tomorrow. Let me know down in the comment section what you thought of the ruling on Doge. Do you like Doge or not? Let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.